Hi there, this is Matt in State of Flux, here with a review for My Neighbor Totoro. This is the next movie in the Studio Ghibli lineup that is interesting for a couple different reasons. Number one, this was a movie that's more experimental. It is an unusual film in that it's a movie without structure, which you don't often see. It very much feels like Hayao Miyazaki took what he and I believe Takahata had learned from making Panda Go Panda, and he wanted to make something similar to that for children, but use it as an extension of like childish escapism, or how a child learns up to break their day through flights of fancy. And it's got an like immeasurable amount of whimsy for being a movie that has no truly traditional structure, no true conflict. There's little micro conflicts within the movie, but the movie really has no story, and that's not to say that it is rudderless. There's a definitive track that is being laid where the characters are kind of going about breaking up their day through these visitations with this spiritual beast, that like there's question to the reality of this creature, this Totoro. It almost feels sort of like a Miyazaki's interpretation of like Winnie the Pooh with Christopher Robin and all of his friends of the forest. This feels like his version of that. And it's good. It's also really interesting because this was viewed as somewhat of an experimental film that distributors and stuff kind of had a little bit of cold feet upon its release, and it was decided that this was going to be partnered with another film by Studio Ghibli. And so this came out in tandem with Grave of the Fireflies as a double feature. Now we're going to talk about Grave of the Fireflies next week, and I have lots of thoughts on that. But I cannot, for the life of me, imagine a world where you're watching these two films together, especially since I believe Grave of the Fireflies was designed to be watched first, and with its conclusion, I feel like I just would have been living in abject terror waiting for the fates of the girls in this film to be similar to that one. I get also the notion that maybe you put this one afterwards as like a pick-me-up, but there's like a weird sense of horror to the beginning parts of this movie, the first 20 minutes. There's like this slight, just childish edge of dread that builds into what could be a horror kind of scenario until the dad teaches the girls to laugh in the face of danger. If you laugh at what scares you, it's sort of like this excellent parenting technique to get your children to not fear the unknown, but to embrace it, to laugh at what is being presented in front of you. It kind of is evocative of E.T. in that respect. E.T. has a lot of horror in the beginning of that story. It could go a direction where it's a traditional horror film, but instead it becomes and is embraced with this childlike energy that recaptures that which could be scary and reframes it into this beautiful family feature. And you get a lot of this sense in this film too, and I like that. The animation is very good, but subdued compared to the animation that we got out of the previous works within the Studio Ghibli lineup. There's not as much going on as Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind, or there's no not the same level of complexity to a lot of the scenes, not much movement that you got in Castle in the Sky. This seems more down to earth, more grounded, in a lived-in reality, but almost kind of an alternatistic reality that shows what a not war-torn period piece Japan might look like in the farmland, where kids are allowed to play and prosper, and not, as reality would have you see in Grave of the Fireflies, not have that same experience, to say the least. Again, it's hard not to talk about the two of those together once you know that they were designed to be watched in tandem upon its original release. I just discovered that recently, and that blew my mind. But now knowing that, watching the two films as such has been a really interesting experience, because I'm getting so much more from them than I had prior to. That being said, I like this movie. However, of the first set of films, this is probably my least favorite. I really understand the notion of why people like it, because it is so unusual, and there's if the fantasy captures you, it really does kind of nestle with you, and so I get the and appreciate the film. It's a vibes piece, and I don't vibe with this one as much as one of Miyazaki's vibe pieces that we're going to be talking about in the next couple of weeks, which I think works a little more authentically for me. That said, I respect this movie a whole hell of a lot, and the bravery to tell a movie that some could argue just sort of meanders through it, yet it really doesn't. As I say, it's not a rudderless film. It has a direction that it's going, and you go with it, you vibe with it, and it'll vibe with you on the same wavelength if you're willing to engage with that. But it's not a traditional piece, certainly not as traditional in story structure as the other films in the Ghibli lineup to this point. But it is a great movie, and I do like it. Let me know what you think of this film in the commentary down below, and we will discuss Grave of the Fireflies soon, and that'll be interesting. Yes, so we'll address that next week. Let's end on this optimistic and whimsical note. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.